Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about the predictive tool that we use in Vedic astrology, and this is called the dashas. The dashas are sort of like our life cycles where we can see the whole cyclic process of when everything will unfold in our lives. Okay, but before we start, I always want to remind everyone, if you would like to receive my free newsletter, go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org, and you will receive my monthly predictions delivered to your email address. While you're there on my website, don't forget to look at my spiritual jewelry that I'm selling. I have malas and many of the spiritual remembrances of who we are and why we're here on this planet. So continuing on, I want you to know, if you are serious about learning more about Vedic astrology, go to my university website, which is universityofvedicastrology.com, and you will better understand what all of this is about that I'm about to discuss. So talking about the dashas, our planetary cycles, what's so interesting about this all to me is that these dashas are based on where our natal moon is in the chart. So it makes such a reference point to the moon. I always say that Vedic astrology is lunar-based, while Western astrology is solar-based, because Western astrology is based on where the sun is, the seasons. That's what really dictates the whole cycles of the Western tropical chart. But Vedic astrology is based on these stars, but particularly where your natal moon is in your chart. This sets up your whole life cycle. And the dasha sequence that I'm going to be talking about right now is called the Vimshotri Dasha system. And the Vimshotri Dasha system is based on what nakshatra. Remember, the nakshatras are based on the stars. What nakshatra your natal moon is in. So realize that the nakshatras, which there's 27 of them, then you're going to, every one of us have our moon in a particular nakshatra. And of course, this is all set up by our time, place, year of birth. So whatever nakshatra your natal moon is in, realize that all of the 27 nakshatras, they are also ruled by a planet. Just like we talk about the signs and the planets, that Mars rules Aries and Scorpio, Venus rules Taurus and Libra. Well, the nakshatras each are ruled by a planet as well. So depending on what nakshatra your moon is in, what planet that rules that nakshatra is the beginning dasha that starts out your entire life cycle. And you see these dasha sequences, they have a sequential order. So let's just say your moon is in Ashwini. Ashwini is ruled by Ketu. That means you start your whole life cycle out in Ketu's Maha Dasha. So when we say Maha, we mean grand, big. And then when we say the subcycle, which I use the word Bhukti, some people just use the word subcycle. But the second level down is called the Bhukti. So what you're looking for to make predictions about your entire life from beginning to end is what dasha you're in. And of course you can see ahead or behind as to what dashas you've been in, as well as what dashas you're going to go into. So this is all, let me take you back, relative to the dasha that you start your whole life, entire life cycle out in. And that will be based on what planet rules the nakshatra your natal moon is in. So knowing all of this, once you discover what dasha you are currently in, and some of these grand cycles are very long, such as Venus is a 20-year cycle. Saturn is 19 cycles, Mercury 17 cycles, but the Sun is only 6 years. And then looking at the Ketu as well as Mars, their cycle is 7 years. So you'll see that there's these long durations of time that you spend in a Maha Dasha, but there's sub-cycles that break it up. So there's a grand cycle and a sub-cycle. But one thing I always tell all of my clients and my students is notice when somebody changes from one grand cycle to the next. Their whole life changes because the reference focal point of their life is the Maha Dasha, the grand cycle. So I always say it's kind of like the country you live in. It's the big picture. Then you look at the sub-cycle that you move in and out of. And these sub-cycles can last anywhere between months and up to 3 years at the longest. So these sub-cycles are going to be more or less what your experience is during that period. So the grand cycle is your current big picture, what country you live in, but the sub-cycle gives you the immediate environment about what you are experiencing. Now, it's been suggested that I do some videos on what it's like to be in each of these Maha Dasha periods, such as what if you just enter into Venus's Dasha, or you just enter into Rahu's Dasha, which is, by the way, Rahu is 18 years and Jupiter is 16 years. So when you first enter, the beginning phase of any Dasha will be Jupiter, Jupiter, Rahu, Rahu, Moon, Moon, Sun, Sun. They will always start out with the sub-cycle being the same as the grand cycle. So during that period is the adjustment period into this new way of believing, thinking, and feeling. Because remember, it's how that planet, how it is placed in your birth chart that will give the results of what you're experiencing at that time. So let me repeat all this. You will enter into a Maha Dasha grand period. And in that beginning phase, that's where everything orients to where that planet is in your chart and what your experiences will be. And it's been said to me, why don't you do a video about each dasha, such as what will you go through when you're in Saturn? What will you go through when you're in Venus, Mercury, Sun, Moon? The issue with that is you can't just say Saturn is going to be like this for everyone, because it really depends on how that planet is placed in your chart. So if it's in a good house, such as we consider the good houses, the houses 1, 5, or 9, then you're going to have a pleasant experience for the most part throughout that long duration of the cycle. But then the sub-cycle ruler, as we call it, the sub-cycle lord, or the Bhukti, let's call it Bhukti from here on out, that's the second level down from the grand cycle. The Bhukti ruling planet will give you what you're really experiencing at that time. But if I could back up and really look at how each of these planetary cycles, what your experience would be, I could give you a generality, but don't take it at face value, because some people could go into Saturn's Dasha and it could be the best thing that happens. Whereas they go into Jupiter or Venus, and these are natural benefics, meaning good planets in a chart, you go into those and it can be the worst time of your life. It depends on how that planet's placed in the chart. So I thought I might do a little series on looking at, if you're in a particular dasha, if that dasha ruler, what house it's in, that will give you an idea of what your experiences will be about. And that is always set up by what your ascendant sign is. Because remember your ascendant sign, as I gave a little Astrology 101 class, what is the ascendant? It's based on your time of birth, and that determines what planets rule each of your 12 houses. So therefore that determines what houses the planets are in. And that's everything, especially when determining generally what one of these dashas will be like. So if you will, I will start with a series of looking at each dasha. But remember, it's very, very specific. Your chart is specific, and it's going to depend on where all the planets are. But if I could give a general rule, here's what I'll do. Let's start with Ketu. Let's say that you're getting ready to enter into Ketu's Maha Dasha. Ketu is a 7-year cycle. So for the most part, generally, most people, when they go into Ketu's Dasha, Ketu can deal with losses. Ketu is, remember, Rahu is gains where Ketu is losses. Rahu is the materialistic world where Ketu is the spiritual world. And for most people, when they go through a period of loss, what do they seek? The only way out sometimes is to pray, to look for a higher divine force to help. So when people go into Ketu's Maha Dasha, this 7-year period, especially the first beginning phase of it, they're going to feel a big change come over them, such as all of a sudden they're looking within. All of a sudden they're thinking about their purpose, meaning in life, spirituality. Why are we here? That's what really comes into question. Many times that comes because of some type of loss, but not always. Sometimes it's just a spiritual journey and search. That's what people will be searching for in Ketu's Dasha. So let's say that you have Ketu in the first house and you just entered into Ketu's Maha Dasha. This is going to give you a sense of feeling alone because the first house is you, and you're going to feel like you're separated and alienated. You just don't feel a part of the world when you go into Ketu's Maha Dasha and it's in the first house. See, generally throughout life you feel like that. But when you go into these dashas, they actually kind of activate these planets as to where it kind of lays dormant, their meanings in your life till you go into that dasha, then it comes alive. It activates that planet. So Ketu in the first is going to make you feel somewhat like you don't fit in. You feel alienated. You don't feel connected to the world anymore. Let's say you have Ketu in the second house. Well, depending on of course, another issue is going to be what signs they're in. But Ketu in the second house is our finances, our money, and our sense of self-esteem. And with Ketu, you may lose those things. You may lose financial rewards or something goes more within. But sometimes, Ketu can be very temperamental. If it's with benefic planets, it can actually mean financial gains. But all by itself, you lose your voice. You don't feel like you're heard when you go into Ketu's cycle, especially initially. Let's say Ketu's in your third house and you go into Ketu's Maha Dasha. This would be a time when maybe a healing must come about with issues around brothers and sisters. Another thing is you go within in terms of how you connect to your world and communicate. You're not going to be as out there with all the communications, talking, speaking, phones, all of that. You want to retreat from that. Remember, Ketu can be pulling in. Let's say you have Ketu in the fourth house and you go into Ketu's Maha Dasha. You will most likely have a move, a change of residence. And maybe there's a healing with your mother. separation with home and family. And this will predominate through the entire 7 years. Let's say you have Ketu in the 5th house and you go into Ketu's Maha Dasha. If you have children, maybe it's time that they leave the nest. You're an empty nester. So Ketu in the 5th could mean some amazing ideas and thoughts. This is the house of intelligence, but you're going to go more within. Say you have Ketu in the 6th house. When you go into Ketu's Maha Dasha, you become very health conscious. Maybe that's because you need to. There may be a health issue. Let's make it more about getting healthy, not because you have to, because you want to. Maybe it's time that people surrounding you in the workplace will leave, employees or coworkers. Let's say you have Ketu in the 7th house and you go into Ketu's Maha Dasha. Yes, your marriage, you're going to have to start looking at the things that maybe you disregarded before. These are the things that need to be cleared and brought to the surface to heal. If there's any unfinished business around in the area of relationships, things that have been shoved under the carpet, when you go into Ketu's Dasha, if it's in the 7th house, you'll be dealing with it. So let's say Ketu's in the 8th house. There may be a time when inheritances and money is due to come to you. Be aware, it may not be as much as you thought. And sometimes this can even deal with legal battles, something to do with money with other people. And it's also a time for incredible psychic experiences. So you're going to find that possibly this is a time that your psychic abilities, intuition come alive. Let's say you have Ketu in the 9th house and you start that dasha. There can be some losses around issues with your dad, your father. Even if he's not here, things will arise that you'll have to clear out and think about. But Ketu in the 9th house will bring you into your spiritual awakening, looking deeper into your spirituality and what your life's about. Learning spiritual subjects, going to school for that. If you have Ketu in the 10th house, you're going to be changing your job or your career when you go into this Ketu Maha Dasha. Something about it will change. Maybe the company you work for will change hands, be bought out, or you'll change your boss. But most likely, you'll change your job. So if you have Ketu in the 11th house and you go into Ketu's Maha Dasha, the people you hang out with, your groups, your friends, they will all change. You'll find that you don't connect with the same people you used to. And you're going to be looking more into people that have similar likes and feelings about things. So that's Ketu in the 11th house. If you have Ketu in the 12th house and you go into Ketu's Maha Dasha, you will start having extremely vivid dreams and your intuition will open. But most of all, it's a time to let go of things. It could be a time of retirement and finishing up old projects, especially healing the issues you've come here to let go of and heal in this lifetime. So with this analysis, I hope you can better understand what it's like when you go into Ketu's Maha Dasha and what that 7-year cycle will bring. But remember, the sub-cycles will change it up and make it look different. But the whole core essence about Ketu is our spiritual involvement, going within, searching for something much deeper, and letting go of the things that prevented us from our spiritual growth. That's Ketu. So with that, I'd like to close. Remember, if you would like more information on me, go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. Or if you would like to study Vedic astrology with me, join our community of astrologers. Go to my university website, which is universityofvedicastrology.com. Thank you.